So for step 3, we're taking a little bit of a step back and looking at the larger picture. So at this point in steps 1 and 2, we've read the article carefully and we figured out what the author's thesis is. We figured out the central claim, the most important point of view that they're trying to prove. Here we go, page width. And we're going to be getting to a point where we try to make a list of all the main points. We're going to try to separate out the important points that we have to include and separate that out from the minor little details that we're going to filter out of our summary. But before we get there, it's very helpful if we can try to think about what the overall structure is. How is this article actually organized and formed? And that's going to help us be able to figure out what is a main point that has to be included versus what is minor and should not be included. Now, we don't have to go into too much detail mapping the article, but it is helpful if we think a little bit about the paragraph structures. So how are the paragraphs being organized? And also the clusters of paragraphs. So in other words, what is the author doing in the first part? What is the author doing in the second part? And so on. So if we think about this article that I had you guys look at, we can take a look and we can see that the first thing the author is doing as an introduction is he's talking about another writer. And if you've read the article through and we know the thesis, then we can tell right away, okay, this is a writer that our author, Glenn Reynolds, disagrees with. And so this article is set up as one big counter-argument. He starts off by setting up an opposing author that he disagrees with, and he's going to do that over the first few paragraphs. But then he's going to explain all the reasons why this writer is incorrect, why Ed Regis is incorrect, so that he can set up and explain his own argument about Mars. So if we take a look here and we say, okay, how much of this is Glenn Reynolds talking about this other writer, Ed Regis? And it looks like we've got pretty much three paragraphs, right? So that's a big chunk. So this introduction is the first three paragraphs, and in all of this, what he's doing is he's summarizing Ed Regis so that he will be able to disagree with him, that he will be able to show why Ed Regis is wrong. So that's the first thing he does, right? And we can start to see the structure. Then we get this very small, very helpful paragraph where he says, so going to Mars raises three questions. Can we do it? Even if we can, is it too hard? And even if we can do it and it's not too hard, is it worth the trouble? And so this little paragraph helps us understand the structure as well, because it shows us how the entire rest of this article is going to be structured. We know the first thing he's going to look at is the possibility. How possible is it to go to Mars? The second thing he's going to look at after that is the level of difficulty in terms of going to Mars. And then the third thing he's going to look at is the benefits. Is it worth the trouble? So here we can take a look and we can see, okay, yep, not the first, but after that part, we've got we've got two paragraphs where he's looking at plans, right? And he's giving an example, and he's making an argument here that, yes, we have plans that would enable us to go to Mars. And because we have these questions, and because he's set this up, and he's using these questions as a structure, as a way to organize the entire article, then when we get down here, answer to question 2, and so we can clearly see that he's switching to a next part of the article. And he's now talking about the level of difficulty, and he's making a small argument about that. So we've got one big paragraph here on the topic of the difficulty of it. And then we have a big chunk of the article where he's talking about a few of the different benefits of going to Mars. So it's all one section, but we can see that it's kind of subdivided as well. He's got a question here where he talks about one of the benefits of going to Mars. That's one paragraph. Then he looks at a second paragraph that's focused on a different benefit. And then in the final part, he kind of moves away a little bit from that, and he finishes off by going back to Regis, counter-arguing Regis, and basically showing examples of how there were always naysayers. There were always people who, like Regis, who were going to second guess new technologies, new explorations, new innovations. And so using this, we now understand the structure a lot better. We know that we've got 3 paragraphs of setup where he's summarizing the author that he disagrees with. Then we get into the question of plans and how possible is it to go to Mars, and we've got 2 paragraphs there. Then we have one big paragraph where he talks about the specific challenges of going to Mars, and he addresses those. Then we have a big section where he's looking at benefits, and we have a few paragraphs there, one for each paragraph. And then finally, he returns to the counter-argument so that he can talk specifically about why Regis is short-sighted and why he's not being adventurous. Now, just knowing this, just having a basic understanding of the structure and how it's put together, is really going to help us on our next step, step number 4, because that's the step where we make the critical decisions about what am I going to include in the summary, what are the main points, versus what are the minor details that I'm able to get rid of.